So my name is David Coe, and my friend and colleague there is Richard Bucelato. And we've been working together since about 2017. And we've always found that we helped each other quite a lot. And the way I kind of always felt about it is Richard makes everything I do that little bit better, or everything I try that little bit better. He has that sort of magical quality about it. And we both have been working in the investment industry for a very long time, for over 30 years. And a couple of years ago, we left the industry because we recognized that climate change and the problems of kind of sustainability and so on is a real challenge for us, and investments are not going to solve it. And we spent a year, very cathartic year, thinking about what we should do about that. We weren't too sure at the beginning, and we wrote a book about our experiences and our thoughts called The Unsustainable Truth, which really is a very good read. So please do try and find the copy and so on. There you can get an electronic copy of Amazon Kindle, for example, and you find it in sort of online bookshops and things. And The Unsustainable Truth. And then in the past year, what we realized is very much that we're really past the tipping point on climate change. If you look at how the weather has been crazy, that's what climate change means. And if you look at how they've been crazy all around the world, that's basically what it means as we start going past that tipping point. So we wanted to do something that would say, okay, we can stop climate change. So how do you actually do it? And where we got in touch with Kaka and with young people in Africa and other places, is exactly on this, because we want to make 2023 the year we stop climate change, and we need your help. So let's imagine now, start from the first question. What does it mean to stop climate change? Just think ahead some years from now, and you've got grandchildren. They're going to be sitting in an exam on world history, and they're going to answer a question: when did we stop climate change? And you can think back about how you might tell them how you would answer that question. You can think back about Kyoto or the Paris Agreement. Well, those are not really when we stop climate change, because since those times, climate change has actually gotten worse. And you can think back about people talking about, oh, we must build renewable energy and all those things. And that might seem like an answer, but actually, if you look at the numbers, it's not. Because although we have been adding a lot of renewable energy, a lot of wind and solar energy and those kind, we have actually not reduced our use of oil, gas, and coal. And in fact, we've been increasing it. We've been increasing it so much that ever since the Paris Agreement, taking that as a starting point, we now use more oil, gas, and coal, so much more that the extra we're using compared to the time when we signed the Paris Agreement is enough to power the whole of the South American continent. So just think about that. We have added so much that we could power an entire continent just from the extra bit. So adding renewables is not the point. What about net zero? Everybody talks about net zero. They talk about it like it's some kind of a miraculous cure, that if we get to net zero, everything will be fine. But what it's done is actually made everything into a bit of a manic and insane stampede. That's actually making climate change worse. And the reason is because this always pitched to us about how we won't need to use oil, gas, and coal in the future when we get to net zero, and made us ignore the fact that we're still increasing our use today. So in that way, climate change doesn't really care about whether we use oil, gas, or coal or not in the future. That's the future. It cares about what we do today. So our grandchildren, when they're going to write and answer that question, when do we stop climate change? Well, they're going to write about 2023. Because whether we stop climate change in 2023 or not, it's going to be a pivotal year. And it's a pivotal year because this year, COP28, which is the major climate conference, is going to take place in the heartland of oil and gas. It's going to take place in the Middle East. And that's the place that everybody thinks of when they think about oil and gas and coal. And it's going to be chaired by the head of an oil company, who is also a minister of a government in a major oil producing country. So they're gonna write about this year because this is the year where either we're going to end up stopping climate change, or everyone is going to look at it and they're going to say, we've turned whole climate change into a trade show. Now, we don't want it to be a trade show, so we want you to help us to make 2023 the year we stop climate change. Well, that hasn't answered what does stopping climate change actually mean. For us, what it means is to have a very clear schedule of oil, gas, and coal production between now and net zero, and fix it in stone so that everybody knows about it. So from this point on, you can tell that we are on an irrevocable path toward getting rid of our use of oil, gas, and coal. Anything else is an excuse. Anything else is about how we can carry on using more today so that we may or may not use more tomorrow. Anything else is about how the trees we plant or the artificial carbon capture is going to allow us to keep using more oil, gas, and coal. When we know that if we keep using oil, gas, and coal, it will defeat the trees we want to plant, and it would actually mean that even our artificial capture is not going to work well enough. And the point is, oil, gas, and coal are like snacks you put out on the table. As long as they're there, someone will want to take them. And the only way for people not to take them is you don't put more out. And the only way to stop from putting more out is to be the one in charge. So we want you to be the one in charge of oil, gas, and coal. That's quite different from what you normally see in terms of climate action and climate protest when people talk about stopping this pipeline or stopping that oil project and so on. All of those things have you being outside as protesters and petitioners. We're talking about you being inside the boardrooms, being the ones in charge. Because you can protest as much as you like, and get arrested as many times as you like, and you can sign as many treaties as you like. Richard and I both know, from working for 30 years in the investment industry, that as long as oil, gas, and coal are owned by people who want them for the money they produce, production will always keep increasing, and it will keep increasing until it is too late. That means if we genuinely want to stop climate change, we need to become owners. We call that transformational ownership. I'm going to explain what we mean by transformational ownership, and hopefully you agree with that this is really transformational. The idea is very simple. We're going to be owners of all the oil, gas, and coal companies by buying them out. And we're going to call on businesses and ask them very simply to say that you need to pay a fee to maintain the planet. And we want you to take a fraction of all the money that we spend with you to ask that fee. And what we're going to do when we buy out all the oil, gas, and coal companies is to transform that ownership from being about money. So we have to make sure that the profits that these oil, gas, and coal companies make don't come to us. Because if we start picking the money, and Richard and I know, because we've both worked in the investment industry for long enough, when you start profiting from it yourself, your whole mentality changes. There's just no way around it. We will be corrupted. Is to give all the profits to every person in the world by writing a check to every one of them. And this you think of basically as like the rain that falls on everybody or the sun that shines on everybody. The money that is made out of oil, gas, and coal does not belong to any one person or one group of people. It belongs to go back to everybody, because we all need to use it. Using it harms everybody. So the only way for us to be able to have the pure responsibility of looking after the production is to make sure that all the profits goes back to everybody. So when you do that, ownership is now totally transformed. It's no longer about being money. It is about cutting oil, gas, and coal production. And at this point, we bring in our governments. Our governments have made the net zero pledges. We make sure they hold to them by cutting production in line with their net zero pledges. At the moment, net zero is like some gala party on the New Year's Eve. So if someone says we are net zero to 2050, what they basically are saying is somehow on the New Year's Eve to 2050, they're going to have this big switch and they're going to go on and off. And they're going to switch from oil, gas, and coal and turn it off that point. Well, that doesn't work. Because the only way we actually get to net zero 2050 is we have to start cutting the production. We have to have a very clear schedule for what that production for oil, gas, and coal between now and then is, and set that in stone. And that's what transformational ownership, where we are in charge, will let us do. So everybody who supports transformational ownership becomes a transformational owner, becomes one of the people who's in charge. Every business who's contributing becomes a part of that. Every government who says, I want to commit to my net zero pledges, becomes a part of that. And all together, we buy out all the companies with a very, very clear and simple mandate. We get all the talents there to work together so we can cut the schedule of production all the way from between now and net zero and have everybody know that and know that we mean it. And all the profits that comes in, we give them all back out, write a check to everybody. And if you are a part of business, or if you are a person that supports it, and you're a part of business that contributes, and you are a government that genuinely wants your net zero target to be met, what you're going to do, what you're now a hero of our climate change story. And our grandchildren will be able to write in their essays and says, my grandparents were heroes of the climate change story. But if you don't want to be that, you are now clearly a villain of our climate change story. And it's a very simple choice. It creates the ability to have that choice. And you will deserve to be exiled, you deserve to be boycotted, you deserve to be sued, and you deserve to be punished by governments who says, we have a net zero target, you're violating it. You're not working with us at all. And this is a new governance. It's a new governance about oil, gas, and coal. And we want to take this to COP28 through a campaign called The Things That Give Us Joy. It's very important that it is called The Things That Give Us Joy, because for it to work, we need to bring all the people in the world together. And if you ask them, anyone, about what it is that brings up, that they care about, it is going to be about the things that give them joy. We're not going to ask to put this onto the agenda of the COP28 conference, because nobody will support you from the conference itself. What we are going to do is to bring about a series of rallies around the world in the run-up to the conference and ask every person in the planet and ask every business on the planet, including the head of the oil, gas, and coal companies and the chair of the COP28 conference, to say, what do you want your grandchildren to write about you? To write about you as a hero of a climate change story? Or do you want them to disown you as the villain? So how do we bring this about? Well, for the majority of people in the world, the things that give them joy start with being able to have a livelihood. So we're going to bring people together, and with businesses pledging money for transformational ownership, we will need to let them know that they can still have their livelihoods. And climate change, with this crazy weather, will tell people how much they stand to lose. So we don't have to be the ones that tell them, oh, you got to fight climate change and all those things. Because climate change is actually going to tell that story ourselves. Everybody in Pakistan now knows that their country was flooded last year and the country is now bankrupt. And other people in other countries watching that will be aware. The movie stars in Hollywood who were washed out of their homes in Montecito just a month ago now know that climate change is actually going for them. And for all their wealth and fame, they are as exposed as you and I are. So we need to be the ones on the other side, helping them to tell them they can still have the things that give them joy. So we want you to become ambassadors of things that give us joy by turning your climate action into livelihoods for yourselves and for others. And in that way, we can have people know they can still have things that give them joy. Now, we were talking earlier, just before I started, and we realized one of the commons, our own children are going through university, and we realized one of the big challenges is, what do you do after university? Some places may have more jobs readily and others don't. Whichever you do, what you're going to find is a major challenge, which is that the jobs that you will find may no longer be compatible to your aspirations of where you are today. And for that reason, it's very important that we can help each other to discover how we can create livelihoods out of the climate actions that we do. And that's our idea of the start of this. And that's what we need you to do. And that's what we want you to do. So we want to hold workshops together with you and explore how that can come about, and to make sure that it is going to be, no matter how tight money is, and no matter how difficult climate change is going to push different countries and places, that you will be able to find an economics for yourself. And we call that an emergent economics. And we want you to sign up to it, to us, and so that we can explore that together and build livelihoods out of it. So that's the start. So the beginning of this, and we have a schedule about how we go, is to spend really the next months building out the basis of that together with you, and so that you can then reach out into the rest of the young people around the world, and we can use those examples and they can see it, and you can then reach out into events around the world. And these are not just sort of activist events or student events. We want you to be able to reach out into, say, business events, into music festivals, sports competitions, into spiritual retreats, and say to the organizers, we can help you connect better and deeper with your audiences, with the things that give us joy. And we can talk about how they can still have livelihoods as well. And we can bring them to understand that actually they can be brave in how they want to face climate change, and make this the year we stop it. So our call is for you all to become teams of ambassadors of things that give us joy, by discovering for yourselves how you can create livelihoods and be able to spread that message to people through events around the world, and to reach out to students on other continents, as well as to your communities where you come from, and to potential employers of where you may want to go to, and to every situation that we can get to. Around the middle of the year, we want to bring all of that efforts back together. We want to create an epic movie about transformational ownership to promote it. And it's going to be an epic movie of good versus evil. It's going to be a movie of heroes versus villains. And it's going to be a movie woven together with clips of things that give us joy, contributed by communities everywhere. And you will see in the movie the contrast between the devastations of the climate and the things that give us joy. And you can become the hero who became shrouded by the things that give us joy and shine with them, or the villain who becomes shrouded by the devastation of the climate and disappear off with them. And with this movie, with it contributed by all the communities, we ask the communities to take it back to their people and ask, if 1 billion people around the world supported transformational ownership, would you too? And to ask their businesses, if businesses around the world have pledged $1 trillion, would you too? And as we head into the months into COP28, which is going to start at the beginning of December, so around November time, we'll call for a series of rallies around the world to count the numbers and to total up the pledges. And what this will do is to take to COP28 a new governance for oil, gas, and coal. We don't need their permission to do this. We can just do this all around, and we can say, the world needs a new governance. Here's a new governance. This is what it is. I asked my daughter, who's 11, I have an 11-year-old daughter, I have an older one than that, 4 children, about this. And my daughter said, well, no chance, not a chance in hell of this happening. Now, we don't know what the outcome will be. But she did say it's worth trying. We never know what the future is going to be. And the important part that Richard and I have learned from our 30 years in the investment industry and also from our own lives and experiences is that if you only do the things that you know the outcome to, then nothing will change. So if we only do the climate actions and the approach towards oil, gas, and coal that we've been doing, we know the outcome to that and nothing will change. But we do know the following about our campaign, about the things that give us joy. What it will ask you to do is to explore how you can turn your climate actions into livelihoods for yourselves. So if nothing else, you will be able to see how you can make a living out of the things that you're passionate about and be able to engage the world on your terms. And you would have given people the things that give them joy. So you would have been able to tell and show others and engage them in events, in events all around the world, that climate change is about the things that give them joy. And you had given them something to reflect about and bring them together. And you would have put forward the choice to every person and every business of a new governance for oil, gas, and coal. And with that, we have that chance to make 2023 the year we stop climate change, so that your grandchildren may write in their exam on when did climate change stop. They can then say 2023 because my grandparents did it. And most of all, what we think is really important for you to know is that no matter what happens, the world is better with you in it. And we want you to know that, because knowing that allows you to be freed, to use your talents and your energy to help people with the things that give them joy. So, Richard, do you want to add to that?
No, very hard to add to that. I think you've summed it up extraordinarily well. It's worth re-emphasizing again that no matter what we do, we need to be able to build livelihoods going forward. Because without that, our climate efforts will actually fail if we can't have livelihoods around what we do. And all the climate efforts we are doing, they're all worthwhile, but none of them will come to fruition and succeed unless we can actually physically stop the burning of oil, gas, and coal. So, coming from the financial world, we have quite a cynical view of how this works, which David mentioned. And as long as there is money involved, the money will ensure that we keep on producing oil, gas, and coal. So you need to take the money out of it, because unless you do that, there will always be interests that will keep pushing for us to use more. Please, all the questions you have, throw them at us. My voice is not great, but we will try to answer them. So feel free to drop them into the chat or unmute yourself and ask whatever you're comfortable with.
So maybe we should talk a little bit more. Sorry. Yes, Alice. Hi.
Yes, hi. I had a question.
Yes.
Sure.
We talked about exploring how we can turn the climate actions into livelihoods for ourselves. I wanted to ask, what kind of climate actions would we turn into livelihoods for ourselves and our community which we live in?
I would like to start by saying the I think a very simple thing is to start asking, what do we do ourselves, and how do we do that? So we can carry on through, but or if you're an example of something that you may have in mind, then we can take it from there. Would you like to give an example of what you think of the sort of action that you're interested in doing?
I should think about it first.
Well, we can take what you talked about. You like nutrition. You're into nutrition.
Yes.
There are aspects at the moment I read an article about really kind of agriculture in Malawi and some of the challenges about it at the moment,
Yes.
because there have been sort of floods that have been going around. Areas have been devastated by hailstorms, which for me was quite a surprise. And you kind of think about, well, how would you introduce aspects of saying, how do I take agriculture in that way, and saying, how do I turn that into something that I can build livelihoods for myself? And the obvious thing is there are many different ways towards how you grow things. And one of the bigger issues is, how do you use fertilizers, synthetic fertilizers especially, because synthetic fertilizers are largely made out of gas, natural gas. And if we were to have a production schedule where we reduce the natural gas, how do we still maintain the yield that we have? And you end up going into maybe aspects of thinking about, am I in a space where I can engage with regenerative agriculture, if that's something that I like? And regenerative agriculture basically means, how do I make my soil naturally richer? How do I ensure that it doesn't get washed away? What mix of plants do I have in that way? And if you actually phrase that in those ways, you now have the situation where you may say, if I can work with some farmers and with some business people along in shops, and I can actually maybe able to create a position for myself where I can build a livelihood myself, helping the farmers and helping the people in the shops to understand where they can source it, how they can grow it. And if my study at the moment is on nutrition and those sort of things, then I may be able to advise about what mix of plants actually would be a good thing to have for what we do, and how that may come along. Now, Richard and I also know that we end up in our career. Actually, not Richard. Richard ended up in his career because he knew from the age of 3 probably that this is what he wanted to do: trade money, make money, and buy and sell things. I started off as a physicist. I ended up working in finance because my girlfriend at the time was going to go to Tokyo to work, and we had to pay phone bills, and they were very expensive. We didn't have Zoom or those things at those days. And so I ended up having to change jobs and left a university lectureship at Oxford in physics in order to work in finance, so that I can pay my phone bill. So I understand very much that very often we end up in the career that we are in simply because that's the first place we can find a job. But if we take this and actually look at what we're interested in, maybe agriculture, maybe nutrition, and start asking questions about that, we will find resources and we will find opportunities that we can start saying, how can I make a living? And the difference is, in the world we're going to, jobs are actually going to become very hard to find. Because if you look at countries like Sri Lanka, Pakistan, and other places, they are simply running out of money. And businesses are going to find it hard to continue in the same way. So actually what we're talking about makes a lot more sense from that perspective. And the thing I think we often find is that we think it needs to be somehow very recognized and established. But actually, if you look around in nature, nature makes life come about in very simple, incremental ways. Chisomo has a hand up, so I'm going to just say one thing first before going on there. What we want to do is to re-engage with all of you and say, let's have a brainstorming session about exactly what may work so that we find the ways that we can create livelihoods that are suitable to you. So Chisomo, please.
Okay. Thank you, David. It's David, right?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Okay. I can see there's time for the Q&As.
Yep.
Yeah, my question is, you talked about stopping climate change.
Yes. Hello.
I think we might have been off. Felt like it was a cut.
Sorry, Chisomo, we're not hearing you. You talked about stopping climate change. If the audio doesn't work, please feel free to type it into chat. Okay. I think she'll come back. So
Yeah, I'm
Alice,
sure.
do you want to, we can carry on a little bit and think about what sort of things in the climate space or with what you're doing, because the important thing is climate action isn't some specific action. It's about how we approach our economics and our livelihoods in a way that doesn't increase our dependency on oil, gas, and coal.
Okay. In terms of agriculture, I think something that we can venture in is farming using organic fertilizers.
Yep.
Yes, using organic fertilizers to avoid using the inorganic fertilizers. It's also good for your health when you eat things that are organic. So that can really be something that people may like.
Absolutely.
When you pitch it in as something that is organic, it's good for their health.
Yes.
Yes.
And I think what you have there is I have a new neighbor, and she grows vegetables. I live in the city. So I live in the city, and she comes from New Zealand, and it's now warming up. And so I'm going to see if I can team up with her. And the part of this is there's a story to it as well, which is very important, because when you go along and you grow vegetables without the, or in a organic way or in a non sort of synthetic fertilizer way, there is this aspect of what you grow, what are the balance of the foods that you have, what's the variety, and you can have more varieties. So you have a story there to tell, which is a story that will help you to create a livelihood around it, because you can bring people in and you can educate them as you learn yourself, and you can all become part of that. And so what you find when you go about it in this way is you change it from this sense that we often have, which is there are things that we do for livelihoods and there are things that we do for climate. And what we're talking about is merge them together. Don't feel that it's always separated into one or the other. Sorry, Alice.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. So those will be ideas. And what we want to do, actually, if those are the areas that you're interested in, and so on, is actually to say, let's do it. Get together with a few friends. So we think what generally you need is maybe a group of 5 people, because you need the support of others about you, of your friends. Someone who's good with numbers, who can deal with the numbers. Someone who's good with organizing, because there's always some kind of organization necessary. Someone who's good with talking to people, because some of us are shyer than others, and you always need to engage with others. And someone who is good with, what was it again? Someone who's good at numbers, someone who's good at organizing, Richard, can you help out? Someone who's good talking to people.
Well, someone who's good at connecting with people, because if you have products to sell, you need that role, that you actually are comfortable with reaching out, and same if you need to buy things in, you need people who can connect with other people.
And someone who's kind of mechanically minded, because a lot of these things need to put things together in some ways and just sort of hack it about in that sense. It's good with mechanically minded, reasonably good with sort of technology that you may want. And then someone who's just generally a good fun person to be a glue because you want to make this fun. And
Yes.
and together, if you have a group of friends together like that, then you basically have a venture. And you have an idea, you then say, I want to grow vegetables. I want to grow things in an organic way. Well, what kind of things? Can I find some pots around that I might do so? And a lot of these things don't need very much. If I get some seeds, how do I actually regenerate seeds myself and those sort of things? And you get into questions that we spoke with Kaka about how do you actually get water and conserve the amount of water? And you discover things like my mother used to put a plastic bag over a pot, a transparent plastic bag over a pot, because that meant that she didn't have to water it for a long time, because the water that the plant takes up comes back down into it. And that becomes ways by which you can actually create new approaches. And they can be ways by which you can make a little bit of money, either by teaching it or by creating a product that can be used in that way. And you then have this part which takes you on to a step further. So it's all about making little steps along the way. And as you do so, because you're experimenting with it, you're changing your perspective, you're changing the way you can engage to people, and you've got something specific you can talk about. And it doesn't really matter. We've interviewed lots of people in our careers. We've hired lots of people in our careers from them. And I have to say, the thing that always comes across as attractive when we hire someone is someone who has been doing something and talk passionately about doing something along. And that always stands out. And so when you and a group of friends are doing that, you'll be able to find better ways to connect, and they will trust you further because they would have seen that you've actually done something along about what you can then take them to. So that's what we mean by creating livelihoods.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Precious? So I think it's to summarize it up, it's important to recognize from where Richard and I stand is that we are past the tipping point in climate change. Life is not going to get easy, no matter what people tell you. But you can still have the things that give us joy. And part of that is this mentality of accepting it and saying, okay, we can go forward and create things for ourselves, create livelihoods for ourselves. And for young people, it's really important because from our view, you are that transformation. You are the stem cells. If you understand what stem cells are those kind of cells in babies that allow them to grow, that allows them to specialize into different things. You are that transformational element of us, of all of us. And you are that energy that would take us forward into that way. And we have to learn a new economics because the economics that has taken us here is going to take us further into making climate change worse. And that new economics is what we need to learn in order to build livelihoods so that we can go forward. And if we do that, then I believe if we start imagining that and start focusing on that as a start of our climate journey, then we can make 2023 into the year that we stop climate change. Because we'll be able to bring people together in a different dialogue than one that says somehow these people are bad, those people are worse, or whatever it is, on criteria that are really very hard to decide on. But with transformational ownership, it becomes very clear. You either support having a fixed schedule for oil, gas, and coal production that would take us from now to net zero along the lines that governments have pledged. And then you can work on the government separately and say they need to be more aggressive, whatever it is. Or you go along and you say, no, I want to ignore that. I want to carry on doing my own stuff. And if you want to connect up, connect up, then link it, then go to bit.ly. I'm going to put it into the chat, bit.ly/EACCGN for the East African Climate Change, Campuses and Colleges Green Network. And that would take you to a form so that you can be part of this. And so just go to that. If you need the HTTPS in front, I would do that. So there's a Richard. Can you read out that chat and from Precious?
I can read out what it says. Hello, you all. I'm Precious. Sorry, I'm experiencing network problems here. I don't know if I got it right, but I heard something like taking climate action through the things that gives us job, obtaining livelihoods. That sounds really interesting. So far at the EACCGN, what are some of the activities you've done to stop climate change through the things that give us joy?
So we're going to have a call tomorrow with Kaka and a few other people. We're going to talk about saplings, and we're going to talk about how we can use the saplings that they grow to become ways of generating, livelihood, some money to be able to sustain the network and themselves along the way. And there are lots of different stories about that may be possible, because when you try and grow saplings, you have this thing about the fact that what type are you growing, and how you can actually then go ahead and actually get people to do that. Kaka mentioned before about, what about sapling for a birthday? Actually, if you think about a parent wanting to get something for a child, getting a little sapling that can grow with them, but actually get a new one every year, but a different type. So here you have this part where what you're doing is you're asking, let me understand about the different variety of trees that you might have. And we learned from the conversation there that actually some trees help you to keep mosquitoes away. So that can be a hugely useful thing to have around, even on a balcony or something. And they may not have to be very large trees, or they may be very large trees, whichever they are. And that then leads you to say, actually, in my mind, I think there's a room for a Kenyan book of trees. And that could be something that you can actually sell at events. It could be simply an electronic book that you can offer up, so you don't have to spend the time printing paper and the cost of those things. And what that can then do is actually gather knowledge together and bring people along. And these are actions that you may be really interested in, but they now allow you, in order to actually enter into a transaction and into an economics with someone else. And the essential point about what we talk of in terms of what we call emergent economics is that the economics emerges from those transactions along. So when you sell someone a book in that way, you make a connection with them and you keep that informed with them. If you sell a person a tree for a child on their first birthday, you want to maintain that connection along to say on the second birthday, how that tree is doing, or along the way, and what other things may be appropriate. It might be a fruit tree or maybe something else as you go along in those ways. So that's an example of taking one of the things that were talked about, and what we want to do is to go and take it to the next stage and actually have some of the young people and say, can we make that work? Can we prepare something so that at an event, you've got something to offer and sell in that way, and take it out there. And then before you know it, what you suddenly find is actually you're beginning to make connections in a different way. It's no longer about trying to pontificate about how we must all care about climate change and those other things. Actually comes through as saying, I want to reach to offer you something that can help you with the things that give you joy. I hope that is helpful, Precious. But sign up so that we can actually engage in conversation better, and then we can do that more.
Yeah, and we can have another session and we can brainstorm, talk about things.
And the way we take that to the next stage is these becomes examples of activities that we can go to events and talk about. And by doing so, we can bring to them the idea for people that they too can be involved. A lot of people feel that climate is all about a protest and they're not sure they want to protest. But what we want to do is to take into the events and have organizers of events actually understand that they can connect better with their audiences, and you can all go and help.
David, I think it's also important to note that it's good for allies and perhaps also precious to know that we may also want to connect with either environmental club back in the university in Malawi. We need that voice as well to count under ESCGN. And I don't know whether you're aware that Malawi mines coal, like the coal we're talking about.
Yeah.
They will tell us maybe their experience and whether they feel what they feel about the coal mining. There are a couple of minerals in Malawi, and I know just the other day, we have the falls in between Zimbabwe. Is it Zimbabwe? There's somewhere in South Africa that. Upon the report that were given concerning the river Euphrates drying up, we also have danger on the falls that are in between Zimbabwe and I think Zambia. I'm forgetting the name of the falls. Maybe they will share what they think, about like how the government is doing the issue of coal mining and how do you, plan all these things to try and stop, that all that is happening there.
I think that's really important about how you reach communities which are like a coal mining people, because you cannot strip away livelihoods. So you have to engage and actually then think, okay, what does this schedule look like? I think people tend to think of this schedule of stopping oil, gas, and coal as somehow very immediate. But the big difference, the big change that you make is to say it's not going to be increasing. So a couple of weeks ago, Richard showed me, pointed me to this speech by the General Secretary of OPEC to say how he thinks oil is going to increase by about 8 to 9% over the next 2 years by 2025. The first step is we have to stop that from happening. When we stop that from happening, when people see that as happening, they will all look to different ways of thinking about their livelihoods. And that's where we have to have the examples, be able to say, we can do this, we can do that, livelihoods can become looking like this, whether we are in an urban area or in a rural area. We need those examples along. And that needs to be examples that comes from actual situations. And that's why we're calling on all the young people, because you come from every situation, you come from every community. And then we can actually brainstorm together and think, what might be possible? What are the resources there? What are the opportunities there? And I'd like to tell a story. It's a story that I realized at Christmas. And my wife works as a midwife, so she helps mothers give birth to their babies. And we live in London, in the United Kingdom, and we live in an area where the wealthiest people live and the poorest people also live. So my wife, as a midwife, goes and see the wealthiest people and also the poorest people. And she says that every one of them, doesn't matter whether they're wealthy or they're poor, all want their children to be born in the best hospital or in the best place, wherever that they think that is. And it occurred to me at Christmas to say, why did God, because I'm Christian myself, why did God have his son, Jesus, born over Christmas in a stable of all the places that you can choose. And then it occurred to me that I'm asking the wrong question. Because the question is, God, if I believe in God in the way that I believe God is, clearly knows what is the very best place. Then why am I not seeing the stable as the very best place with all the resources and all the richness that we would want? And that is how we tend to see about things that can provide us with livelihoods and other actions. We tend to blinker our vision, and we no longer see that actually the resources and opportunities are there. So if you're in a coal mining region, the question very much is, let's try and understand what are the resources that are available, what can be done, and understand how we can still build livelihoods and move forward. And that's how we can still have the things that give us joy. And if we don't actually take that step to approach it in that way, then what we're going to do is we're going to stand back and we're going to say, someone needs to come and help us. And with climate change, making the weather go all crazy, and basically with more damages becoming from climate change going around, we're going to find that actually people are not going to be able to come to us, even if they wanted to. And we'll get stuck until we recognize and actually see that no matter where we are, no matter what the situation, there are always going to be resources and opportunities. And that's how economics emerge. And that's an emergent economics. Doesn't need us to wait. Okay, Richard, do you have anything to say, or should we?
No, very hard to add to that. I think this was an excellent moment for us to catch up with all of you, hear a little bit about what you're doing, where you are, and you also heard from us. And I think best path forward is simply that we meet up again, maybe with more people, and we brainstorm around what the possibilities are where you are located and what David and I can do to help with those possibilities.
So sign up and challenge us to help you, basically. Sign up, get your friends to sign up, connect with us, and actually, get our time and challenge us with things that you think, actually, it would be nice if I can turn this into a livelihood, want to do this, and so on. And we can make examples of those things. We start presenting them out to other people, get more people involved in thinking about it. And we want to do that very quickly over the rest of this first quarter, so that by the second quarter, we've got stories we can take out to people around, and we can start reaching out to students in other countries, in other continents, with actual examples, and we can then start going out into events and saying, this is what we can do. We can help you connect deeper with your audiences and things that give them joy. And ultimately, to take that to start promoting transformational ownership and making 2023 the year we stop climate change.
Yeah, and also, David, as you wrapped up, I want to mention that of all the greatest assets that we have, our voice is the most important thing here. So it doesn't really matter whether we will get time to meet physically or in any way. But what I want to urge all of us here is social media is also a very powerful tool that we can be able to use as a way to lift these voices, even to the arrogant nations that are dealing with the coal mining gas and all that. So I want to tell us that the reason why we are doing this is because we want to build one very strong voice that is coming, of course, from the youth, the young people from Africa and all over the world. So we targeted like at least to have today at least maybe 10 to 15 people are joining this, but I think because of the technicalities and network and all that, that is why you have seen the turnout to be low. But all the same, I want to mention to Precious that I know next time you are doing this meeting, because you're going to do regular meetings, we want to think on how we can be able to bring more people on board to be able to communicate through one channel and one voice to be able to live these stories. And of course, also for Alice, we want to say thank you so much. I know you have friends, you have family, be a finalist student in the university. I know there's a lot that you've so far done, and that's what we exactly need to leave this voice for. So we will also be having the launch for EFCCGN, and that's going to happen this year, maybe around April. And we want every speaker that is going to come through to reach everybody that is our partners to follow us on social media. All the members, all the team leaders from different countries, they'll be following this. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be a great session, going to be recorded as well. We are targeting at least, if not many, we want at least to have, let's say 5,000 people attending this launch, both virtually and also physically, at least to ensure and to show the world that we actually need to, make this year the year to stop climate change. Last but not least, I also want to mention to you, my great people of Malawi, that in case there is any event that concerns climate, and you want David and Richard to reach out, don't hesitate. Always organize. You can do this one virtually. We can always reach out and make a speech to the students either during the session or any event happening. Just tell us in advance, and I'm pretty sure we're going to prepare some nice session for you for this particular one. So on my side, I want to say thank you very much for this. We will try as much as we can to engage you. There's a Google Doc that has been dropped on your chat just on this call.
Use it.
Yeah. Sign up as many people as you can. It is automatic. It records your name on our spreadsheet, so it can easily help us to reach out to you as you source material for this year. Otherwise, thank you on my side.
Thank you
Thank you,
for giving
Kaka.
us this opportunity, and please do come back and challenge us.
Absolutely.
So, okay, I'm going to end the meeting now. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah,
and good
thank
luck,
you,
Alex.
everyone. Bye, and see you
Good luck to
soon.
everyone. Yep. Bye.